Now, how do you optimize a Scrum process? So, if you haven't worked in this before, it might seem strange what I'm telling you, but I'm just going to give you some ideas of what happens to other teams. In order for you to optimize the Scrum process, you definitely want to have an efficient dev to QA process. So in other words, how do you test what was built? If you can't test it, it's not really a good story, right? So you need to have a good way to test that. You need to have a clear workflow. How do you know who's working on what and where are they in the process of working on this thing? You don't want to have to call every developer and ask them what they're doing today. That's not what you want. You don't want to have to be bugging people because they need to focus. They need to be 100% focused on delivering because you're going to hold them accountable for what they committed to build. So while they're holding them accountable, you can't be over there back to the stick trying to ask them where you are today. What are you doing today? That's not the point of it. You should be hiring people who are responsible enough that they can work independently. And then when you come to the Scrum meeting, that's when they can voice any concerns they have about the work they're doing. That's how it normally works in corporate America. So clear workflow. The clear workflow will tell you or anybody else that looks on a Jira board or whatever tool they're using, here's what these people are doing. This person's working on this story and they're in this step. You don't need to call them, don't need to ask them, don't need to send them a message. There's no need to bother them. They can just keep doing what they're doing, right? Good release planning. How do you know when you're releasing something to your production environment or any of your lower environments? Which means you need to have a plan for how you're going to release things. You can't just have this big unknown. When it's done, and nobody knows when it'll be done. That doesn't work. You have to have a release plan. And everybody needs to know what we're working towards, what date we're working towards, and you should be able to commit some of those dates at a high level. What I mean by that is people shy away from telling exact dates, right? I cannot tell you that this thing will be done by April 15, because on April 15, maybe we're not done. You're gonna have to come up with a different date. So you don't want to sound like you're always shifting your date. So you can say things like we're working towards having this done by the first quarter or third quarter. Make it fuzzy, like it's within those 3 months is the time frame, right? So we don't have to commit to an exact date because we can't. We have too many variables to tell you exactly which day, and we might change. So we don't want to be held. I don't need to hold us too accountable because we're running a business and things change, right? So being able to have some plan though, but that's what you tell the customers. Behind the scene, you have a date that you're trying to get everybody to work towards, right? So having that plan is important. Now, you have to also make fast decisions. People that sit around and wring their fingers and not sure what they're going to decide, you can't work with those people. It doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. Making a decision is better than making the right decision. So obviously, you're not going to walk around and make bad decisions, right? But sometimes there are some unknowns, and because of the unknowns, people spend a lot of time running around, digging up, trying to find. You want to get every parameter before you can make a decision. Sometimes you're in the sprint meeting, and the developer needs to know what to write his code from, and you got to make a call. Make a decision. Now, you'll make better decisions if you know the customer, you understand the customer's journey, you know what the product is trying to do, you know what the problem the product solves, you understand the roadmap where you're going. All of these factors will help you to make a good decision. But the developer cannot sit around while you're trying to wring your fingers, trying to figure out what we need to do. So it is your job in the first couple of days, or the first, I would say maybe first 60 days, to get a good grasp of the product and a good grasp of the customer so that you can help alleviate some of these things and make some of these decisions that you can feel comfortable to make. Now, if it's a big decision that you think, well, I really need to talk to some leadership person, fine. But little decisions about the development or little decisions about the user stories, little decisions about the functionality, you should be able to take off his plate because you should know how detailed or how this product works and who we're doing it for, and that can inform how you help them make decisions, right? Well thought out designs. You need to have designs. If you're doing anything that has a UI, the design needs to be clear. They need to know where the buttons go, where the tables go, how that looks. And you don't have to convert yourself into a designer. like a UX designer and start using, Figma and all of these other stuff. You just need to be able to do like a wireframe, grayscale, just draw a box. Here's a table. It has these columns. It has a button here. It has a menu over here. This is what the menu says. It doesn't need to be fly. It doesn't need to be pixel perfect. But you have to be able to communicate visually. What are we building? What does it look like? What data points do I need to show? The UX design I'm talking about, or the design I'm talking about, is what does the UI look like? What does the screen look like? Where do we put the elements on the screen? Where do we put the table? How many columns does the table have? Is the table going to be paginated, or are we going to do lazy loading? Does the table have these data points? Do we have a button for continue or a button for next? What happens when you click the button? What do we have a menu? Where does the menu go? What happens when you click each menu? Does it drop over the thing? Do we have a sub menu? All those details. Somebody got to figure them out. They're not going to appear by magic. So somebody got to write it, and that person is you. So you need to have clarity on what these designs are and what they look like. So even if you can't, I'm not suggesting that you go learn how to be a UX designer. That's not what we're saying. We're saying if you can draw it on a piece of paper like this, here's a table. Here's where it has the stuff. You can hardly see it. Here's a button. Here is a menu item. These are the items on the menu, what it says. Even if you draw something like this, it don't matter. Put it on a whiteboard, put it on a PowerPoint slide, do something so you can say, this is what I want you to build. It should look something like this when you're done. So the developers need something visual to work from sometimes, if you have UI involved. If it's just a back-end thing, that's different. But if there's any screen that the user needs to tap into or go to, it needs to be designed, and somebody has to do that design. And then understanding the feature value, like, why are we building this thing? What is the value that the user is going to realize by having it? What are they doing today that they didn't have without us building it? And how are we improving their lives? Why are we doing it? If you can't justify why you're doing it, then you shouldn't do it. If you don't see a value to it, then you probably shouldn't do it. Like, don't build things to build things. Don't build features on top of features. Everything you build is solving a real problem for a real human. You're not really solving problems for systems. You're solving it for a human. Who is that human, and what problem are you solving for them? You got to think about that when you're going through requirements, right?
So let's say, I know you have these 6 points now. So let's say in few sentences, when you say a process is optimized, what will you say?
So when you're looking at your Scrum process, does it cover these things? Are you able to provide a clear workflow in your Scrum process? Are you able to have a good release planning in your Scrum process? Are you able to efficiently have dev and QA work together? Are you able to make quick decisions because you can see everything that needs to be decided on in your Scrum process? And the process includes all that stuff, the people, the tools, and the steps. That's the process, right? I just have to set the stage before we get into like Jira and stuff, because you need to have the background so that you have to know why you're doing what you're doing. So this is to help you set the mindset of this is how you're going to be working going forward when you're working with a Scrum team.